Based on my numbers, it's going to be extremely close. And this may be the only movie this decade or next that has a shot at overtaking Avatar, except for maybe Avatar 2. What's up, guys? Doc Ito here. The doctor is in. Today, we are analyzing the Avengers Endgame box office numbers. With a $1.2 billion opening weekend, is this enough to overtake Avatar's overall total of $2.8 billion and take the crown of the highest grossing movie of all time? Buckle up for the analysis. And remember to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any updates, or as we like to call them, free repairs. With Endgame breaking both domestic and foreign records, I wanted to use the same analysis I've been doing for Alita to try to see if it'll dethrone James Cameron's other project, Avatar, as highest grossing movie. One way to try to predict these numbers is taking the opening weekend and using a multiplier of what the movie's going to end up with based on these opening numbers. Infinity War made $258 million opening weekend and finished with $678 overall, for a multiplier of 2.6. Running the math of these big-time movies shows a multiplier between 2.6 and 3.8 being the most accurate. Infinity War last year was very front-heavy, meaning it didn't carry very far. It's very possible we see something similar with Endgame. With spoilers leaking online, people are going to want to see the movie in the first weekend or as soon as possible, meaning that the 350 opening might fizzle out quicker than expected. And there's also a fair amount of competition the next couple months. Detective Pikachu, John Wick 3, Aladdin, Godzilla, Dark Phoenix, Men in Black, Toy Story 4, just to name a few. Taking the low-end multiplier, which Infinity War actually performed at, would predict about $910 million in the US. The high end, like Force Awakens, would be about $1.3 billion. I think we're going to be much closer to $900 million than $1.3 billion, because I do think this film is going to be very front heavy. Here's the performance for Infinity War. These yellow lines indicate the expected performance based on the opening weekend, and you see it actually ended up on the low end of expectations. The most recent Marvel movie, Captain Marvel, very similar. It's also on the low end of the projected values based on the opening weekend. Infinity War had an opening weekend of $258 million. It finished in the US with $679. The foreign numbers are a little more complicated. While they claim an opening weekend of $382, looking at the Internet Archive report from that opening weekend shows $443 was the actual opening foreign weekend, and this did not include China. Every other country opened on the same weekend except for China, Russia, and Serbia. If we add the 18 million from Russia to the 191 from China to the 443, it gives us a 652 million opening foreign weekend. And Infinity War finished with 1.3 billion foreign. Taking that multiplier would predict about 1.8 billion foreign total for Endgame. So if the movie performs just like Infinity War did, we would be looking at about a $2.7 billion total. If it has a lot more legs and performs more like the other movies, we could be looking at about $3.1 billion. So how did Avatar do? The opening weekend was paltry by comparison at just $77 million. But this movie had an absolutely incredible run like we will probably never see. The following weekend, $75 million, almost no drop. Then 68, 50, 42, and so on and so forth. The movie was first 7 weekends in a row. This just doesn't happen. The legs for Avatar were incredible. It came out December 18th, and even in late February, almost March, it was still making over $10 million every weekend. I showed you Infinity War was at the lower end of projections. Captain Marvel was at the lower end of projections. Avatar is off the map. It kept rising every single weekend like no other movie, finally finishing at a domestic number of $760 million. And not only that, but the international box office was $2 billion, for a total of $2.777 billion. So based on these numbers, Endgame is projected to be right around where Avatar ended up. In my opinion, I think Endgame is going to be very front heavy. People are going this weekend. They don't want to see spoilers. They want to see the end of the series. In a month or two, we are not going to see the same numbers that Avatar pulled out. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually end up even below this $2.7 billion number, but it's probably going to be very close. And this is the only movie in recent history, and maybe the only movie in the next decade, that has a shot at overtaking Avatar. Another thing to consider is adjusting for inflation. as Avatar is about 10 years old now. With that adjustment, we would be looking at about 3.3 billion. However, if we're talking about those numbers, Gone with the Wind wins at 3.7. And of course, James Cameron's other IP, Titanic, is right behind at 3.1 billion. So we'll have to see where it ends up. We'll get the official numbers a little later from the opening weekend. For the Alita fans out there, this is the graph, and you see it performed pretty much where it was expected to based on opening weekend. If you have not seen Alita, go and see it. It's a fantastic movie filled with incredible characters and love and detail that James Cameron and Robert Rodriguez placed into this movie. It is a passion project and it is amazing. You will not regret seeing it if you haven't. So remember to like and subscribe to the channel. We do not stand by in the presence of evil. We'll talk to you soon. God bless. Doc out.